Today, I'm going to explain an American horror thriller movie called The Menu. You may have already heard of it, because honestly, there has never been such a creepy movie made about food in cinematic history. As a horror film, it stands out with a concept that's truly one of a kind. Toward the end, the story takes a turn so bizarre, it leaves you stunned. So, without wasting any time, let's jump right into the story. At the beginning, we see two people named Taylor and Margot. They're all dressed up, waiting at a private dock. Taylor has made a reservation at an ultra-luxurious restaurant located on a remote island. Each guest's meal costs $1,200, and not just anyone can get in. Because this place is so exclusive, it only caters to the rich, the famous, and the high-profile celebrity class. Soon, a private boat arrives to take them to the restaurant's isolated island, known as Hawthorne. They are greeted by a woman named Elsa. She asks Taylor, "Who's with you?" Taylor replies, "Margot." Here's the real story. Taylor was supposed to come with his girlfriend, but they broke up at the last moment, so he had no choice but to bring Margot instead. Next, Elsa gives the guests a tour around the island. Here, they grow their own vegetables, raise animals, and even butcher them to prepare meals. Everything is done so precisely that each dish becomes a piece of art. Elsa shows how everyone working there is constantly involved in the cooking process with the chef. The staff have their own shared cottages, only for sleeping, and the chef lives alone in a separate one. Then the guests head to the dining table. An open kitchen is already buzzing with prep work. This is where we learn that Taylor is a food blogger. He's totally obsessed with food. He takes photos, writes reviews, and presents himself on social media with intense seriousness. Taylor is here not just for the food, but because he's a massive fan of the restaurant's head chef, Chef Slowik, a world-famous celebrity chef who's constantly in the limelight, featured in countless cooking shows, articles, and gossip columns. Soon, Chef Slowik himself comes out to inspect the dishes. Elsa whispers something in his ear, and from that moment, Chef begins to closely observe Taylor and Margot. Anyway, the starter is served next. Everyone seems to enjoy it, and slowly we begin to meet other guests and learn their stories. Meanwhile, Taylor tells Margot how deep his passion for food goes. He says, "I follow cooking like a maniac. I've watched each of Slowik's shows at least 10 times. The way he explains every single step, from a flower petal to the final garnish, it's mesmerizing." Taylor makes it clear that Margot will never understand this art the way he does. To her, food is just something you eat. To him, it's an emotion. It's an experience. It's art. The guests haven't come here just to eat. They've come to witness an exhibition. Then, Chef Slowik appears and presents the first course, called The Island. The dish is served with perfection, each element explained in detail, with stories behind the ingredients. The food is displayed on black stone plates, surrounded by Irish flower petals. Everyone is amazed. "Wow, this is food art," Chef says. "Don't eat it. Taste it. Smell it. Feel the luxury. And above all, respect it." But instead of listening, Taylor tries to explain the dish to Margot. Chef cuts him off and asks everyone to pay attention. He calmly finishes his statement and walks away. The guests start eating, but Taylor is still caught in a wave of emotion. He says, "I never imagined the food, the ambiance, everything would be this luxurious." Then Taylor turns to Margot again and asks, "Do you think Chef Slowik is mad at us?" Margot replies casually, "Come on, we're paying customers. We came here for a meal and Chef Slowik is serving us. He's not our boss. Why would he be angry?" But Taylor takes it so seriously, his expression slowly begins to change, almost like something is twisting inside him. It's like he's developing a blind obsession with the chef. Meanwhile, another guest, a famous food critic named Bloom, is there with her husband. As they eat, she starts analyzing every single ingredient, every tiny design element on the plate. Then begins the second course. Chef steps forward and says, "Tonight's theme is breadless bread." He explains, "Once upon a time, bread was the food of the poor. If there was no bread on the table, they felt something was missing. But we're not poor. You've come here for luxury. So tonight, we're going to serve food without the bread, to show that simplicity itself holds beauty." Some of the guests laugh in confusion. Breadless bread? What could that even mean? And then, Chef serves a variety of flavored creams, without any bread. Everyone is stunned, especially Bloom, the food critic. She says, "Wow, the detail. It's like micro art." But then she notices the yellow cream has slightly smeared on the plate. She comments on the flaw and even discusses it directly with Chef. Chef apologizes calmly and says, "For you, I'll prepare it again." As a compliment, he sends her an entire bowl filled with handmade cream. Bloom is shocked. Meanwhile, a group of friends gets frustrated. They go up to Elsa and demand, "Give us bread. We're not here to just eat creams." But Elsa refuses. They get angrier and say, "Do you even know who we are? We're from Doe Valley. Bring us the bread, now." Elsa smiles coldly and replies, "Oh, I know exactly who you are, and I know your boss too. But tonight, you won't get what you want. You'll get what you deserve." That one line makes many of the guests realize, this restaurant doesn't just serve food. There are strict, twisted rules at play here. At this point, Margot makes it clear. She's not interested in this bizarre food art or high-concept experience. She's paid a fortune to eat what she wants, not to be force-fed a performance. She looks Chef straight in the eye and says, "There's nothing here worth eating. You don't get to tell me what I should or shouldn't eat. That's my choice." Chef remains silent and walks away. But now, Taylor is furious at Margot. He says, "You can't talk to Chef like that." Anyway, the third course begins. And this dish is called Memory. Chef announces, "This dish is inspired by a terrifying memory from my childhood." He begins to open up. "When I was young, my father was always drunk. Every Tuesday we'd eat a dish called takush. One night, while drunk, my father tried to beat my mother. In a moment of fear and rage, I grabbed a knife and stabbed him in the leg to save her." He continues, "The blood from that wound, it mixed into that night's takush. So now, every time I remember the color, the taste, the smell of that dish, I remember that trauma. And that's why tonight's dish is named Memory." Then, everyone is served the dish. Each plate has a laser-printed image on a tortilla. But these weren't just any pictures. They were images of each guest's worst memory. In front of one actor, there's a poster of the worst film he ever did. In front of Taylor, there's a picture of him taking photos of the food, even though photography was strictly prohibited here. He gets scared. Bloom's husband sees an image of his brain tumor surgery. And in front of Bloom, there are photos of restaurants that were shut down after she gave them fake reviews. Another guest, a middle-aged man, has a photo in front of him, of himself with another woman. His wife sees it and immediately begins interrogating him. The man panics. He mumbles, "This has to be a prank. They're just messing with us, right?" But it wasn't just him. That group of friends who had come together, their tortilla prints showed evidence of money laundering worth millions. Everyone is in shock. There's only one question in their minds. How did Chef Slowick know all this? These were deep personal secrets, truths that, if exposed, could land some of them in prison. Turns out, Chef had done extensive research on each guest before they arrived. He already knew every detail about their lives. Meanwhile, Taylor whispers to Margot, "Do you think Chef's mad at me? Should I apologize to him?" Margot responds calmly, "You're overreacting. Just relax. We're not eating here for free." But Taylor snaps, "Exactly. Because I had to pay for you too. And I don't want you ruining the experience, ruining the food from my favorite chef." They start arguing quietly. Margot, clearly frustrated, gets up from the table and storms off. She walks down a hallway and stops in front of a silver door. She stares at it, curious. But just then, Elsa appears and blocks her. "You're not allowed to go anywhere right now," Elsa says. Margot replies, "I'm just heading to the restroom." Inside the bathroom, she lights a cigarette. Now, maybe you noticed, Margot didn't receive a printed memory image like the others. Why? We'll find out soon. While Margot is still in the ladies' room, Chef Slowick walks in. He confronts her. "Why didn't you eat my dishes? You didn't like them?" Margot says, "I wasn't hungry." Chef asks for her name. She replies, "Margot," but Chef coldly says, "You're lying. Your name isn't Margot." Margot is visibly shaken. Chef clearly knows who she really is, but how? Without saying much, Margot quickly returns to the table. Then, the next dish begins. A beautiful cloth is laid across the floor. The space is decorated like a giant dinner plate. Chef calls over his junior chef, Jeremy. He tells everyone, "Jeremy is good at what he does, but he's not great like me. He works hard, but he'll never be me." Then Chef asks, "Are you happy with your life, Jeremy?" Jeremy silently shakes his head. "No." Chef continues, "Do you want to be like me?" Again, Jeremy answers, "No." Chef says, We create food to please the ones we love, to earn their approval. And in that process, we give everything, our body, our mind, and our soul. That pain, that sacrifice, it latches onto our bodies and minds, and our lives become chaotic. That's why, Chef says, this dish is called the mess. Suddenly, Jeremy walks up and shoots himself in the head, right in front of everyone. He drops to the floor. A dead body lies on the mat. The guests freeze in horror. Chef, completely calm, announces, "This was part of the menu, a segment in tonight's show." Some of the guests wonder, maybe it's a live performance, some magic trick, a prank, but others, they know this is not a performance. This is real. A couple tries to escape, but they're stopped by the staff. One of the men is held down, and at Chef's command, a staff member cuts off his finger. Up until now, most of them believed it was some kind of twisted dinner theater, but now, their faces go pale. Only Bloom and her partner still try to convince themselves. It's theater. This is all an act. Then Chef calls out to Margot. He asks, "Who are you? What's your name?" Margot again replies, "My name is Margot." Chef answers firmly, "I know you're not Margot. Tell me the truth." He says, "Your identity matters. Because you're not on tonight's guest list, and you're not on the staff list either, so I'm giving you a choice. Decide, whose side are you on, the staff's or the guests'?" Margot stares at him and asks, "If I choose correctly, will that let me live?" Chef looks at her and calmly says, "No matter which side you choose, you're going to die tonight. Not just you, everyone is going to die. The only decision left for you to make is whose side you want to die on." Margot is stunned. Chef gives her a little time to think it over. Meanwhile, a special dish is placed in front of Taylor. He becomes so obsessed with his food that even the deaths happening around him don't affect him in the slightest. Everyone else is terrified, but Taylor, he just keeps eating. Elsewhere, one guest tries to escape through a window, but the glass won't even crack. Another runs for the woods, but security quickly catches him. Chef begins speaking with each guest, one by one. He turns to Bloom and her partner. Annoyed, he says, "Think about your reviews, the fake ones that shut down entire restaurants." Then he approaches the elderly couple, the same man who had his finger chopped off earlier. Chef says, "You've been coming here for 5 years. You've dined here 11 times. So tell me, name just one dish you've had here." Silence. They can't recall a single thing, not even what type of fish they once ate. Chef shakes his head. "We work so hard for people like you, and you couldn't even remember the name of a single dish. Do you know the effort we put into every plate here? People dream of eating at this restaurant once in their lifetime. And yet, you came 11 times and remember nothing." Suddenly, the group of friends in the back shouts, "This isn't even your restaurant. This island, this restaurant, was built entirely with Mr. Doug's investment." Chef smiles. "You're absolutely right. Doug helped me a lot." Then he points outside. Everyone turns to see Doug hanging from a rope, and then they lower him, slowly, into the ocean, drowning. The scene shakes everyone to their core. Chef resumes his one-on-one talks with each guest, but we'll explain the true meaning of those conversations later in the story. For now, Chef returns to his private quarters. Margot's time to think is up. Chef calls her back. He asks, "Were you looking at that man, the one whose finger was cut off?" Margot nods. "Yes." "Why?" Chef asks. That's when Margot reveals the truth about her identity. She says she was a call girl, and that man had once been her client. Chef looks into her eyes and says, "You and I, we're in the same business. I serve food. You serve yourself." Then Margot drops a horrifying truth. She says, when that old man hired her, he asked her to act like his daughter during intimate moments, which revealed a deeply disturbing side of his mind. That man did have a daughter, but she went missing years ago and was never found again. Did he kill his own daughter? No one investigated. Money shielded him from the law. Next, everyone is brought to a bar area for the next course. It's an open space. Here, one of Chef's junior staff reveals a chilling memory. She says, "Chef Slowick once tried to initiate something physical with me, but when I started crying, he stopped. He didn't kick me out, but from that moment on, he never looked me in the eyes, not once, as if I never existed." After sharing her trauma, she suddenly stabs Chef in the thigh. The dish is named Man's Folly. For the first time, Chef speaks directly to the girl and apologizes. Then Chef announces a new rule. All the male guests will now be given 45 seconds. That's all the time they get, to run. If you manage to escape, you live. If you're caught, you die. Before Chef finishes speaking, all the men take off running, leaving their wives and girlfriends behind. But Taylor wasn't running, so Margot reminds him, "You need to get out of here. Run." Then, all the women are brought back to the dining hall. Exactly 45 seconds later, the staff rush out, chasing down every man who tried to escape. Back at the table, the women sit together, eating silently. They compliment one another, because honestly, there's nothing else left to do. They've accepted the truth. They're all going to die. Chef's assistant, Lillian, becomes visibly emotional, and this is when Margot finally reveals her real name. She's not Margot. Her name is Erin. She also tells the old man's wife who her husband truly is. Meanwhile, the men continue desperately trying to escape the island, but none of them succeed. Each one is captured by the staff and brought back to the dining hall. Now, Chef approaches Taylor. "I invited you personally," he says, "but I told you clearly, everyone who comes here tonight will die. So why did you bring Margot, or rather, Erin, along?" Taylor replies, "I just wanted to share the experience, this unusual event." Upon hearing that, Erin slaps Taylor hard. Chef then takes Taylor into the kitchen. Since Taylor has always considered himself a food artist, Chef gives him a chance. Make your own dish. Taylor is dressed in a chef's outfit, just like the staff. He prepares something hastily, some soggy mess barely resembling food. It's completely inedible. Consumed with shame, Taylor walks into a side room and hangs himself. Chef turns to Erin and says, "It's time to prepare the dessert. Go to the next room and bring me the barrel." Erin steps out, but on the way to retrieve the barrel, she makes a decision. If she wants to survive, she has to act now. She sneaks into Chef's private cottage. There, she finds old photographs, awards, and a magazine cover. His first feature, the moment he became famous. She also discovers an old radio. She tries using it to call for help. Just then, Elsa walks in. Elsa says, "I'm Chef's most trusted. He gives me all the responsibilities, but now he's given you a job. Are you trying to replace me?" Erin says, "No, not at all. I didn't ask for any of this." But Elsa has already snapped. "I won't let you take my place," she screams, and attacks Erin. A brutal fight breaks out between the two. Eventually, Erin kills Elsa and escapes the room. Back at the restaurant, one of the guests was a famous actor. Chef turns to him and says, "You, more than anyone else, deserve to die. Why? Because you made a horrible film that ruined my one day off. After working all week, I went to watch your movie. It ruined my entire evening." That actor had come with his much younger girlfriend, a girl who secretly stole money from him on a regular basis. Chef asks her, "Do you have any student loans?" She replies, "No." Chef responds, "Then you'll die too. You've been stealing when you didn't have to. You could have studied, you could have borrowed, but you chose greed. You're a gold digger." Just then, Erin returns to the dining room. Chef presents a beautiful cake to a man named Bryce, because it's his birthday. Suddenly, a police officer enters the room. Erin had used the radio to call him. Everyone sees him and jumps at the opportunity. They start shouting, pleading for help, begging to be saved. The officer listens carefully. Then, he turns toward Chef and tries to arrest him. For a moment, everyone believes they're finally safe. But no, the officer is part of the chef's cooking team. It was all a setup, a fake performance, a cruel staged act. Everyone is crushed. And now, preparations begin for the final course. Everyone knows this is the end, but Erin, she stands up and says something unexpected. "I didn't like your food," she tells Chef. "I'm still hungry." Chef is caught off guard. He asks her, "Then what would you like to eat?" Erin looks at Chef and says, "I don't want any stories about history. I don't want to hear the philosophy of food. I don't care about food art. I just want something simple, a well-made cheeseburger and fries." Chef's ego is bruised, but he says nothing. Silently, he walks over and begins to prepare the food himself. He makes a cheeseburger, perfectly done, alongside a portion of fresh, crispy fries. Erin eats it slowly. She smiles. "This is really good," she says. Then she asks, "Can I get the rest packed to go?" Chef nods. He wraps it up, exactly as she asked. Then, strangely, he lets her go. Next, Chef announces the final course of the evening. He calls it s'mores, the classic American and Canadian campfire dessert. Charred marshmallows, melted chocolate, flaming sweetness. Each guest is now dressed in marshmallow-themed clothing. Chocolate crowns are placed on their heads. Explosives are set up throughout the room. Everyone, sitting, standing, waits in silence. There is no escape, no more pretending. Everyone knows this is the end. Chef walks forward. He lights the fire. In moments, the restaurant, the island, everything goes up in flames. Customers, staff, all burn together. No one is spared. And now, the scene shifts to Erin. She's calmly sitting in a boat in the middle of the sea. She unwraps her cheeseburger, the one she packed to go, and takes slow, satisfied bites. There's peace on her face, a quiet victory. She wipes her mouth with the menu. And that's how the terrifying story of The Menu ends. But now, the real question. Why? Why all this? What does it mean? The truth is, this film, much like the Spanish viral hit The Platform, isn't meant to be taken literally. It's metaphorical, a dark satire. In simple terms, people are forgetting the value of the simple things. Food, once a basic necessity for all, has become a status symbol, a trend, a luxury, an art experiment. A single meal here costs $1,250 for a few petals arranged on black stone. This movie explores how a chef, in his obsession to fulfill the world's expectations, lost his passion, his joy, and his humanity. And the guests, they weren't there to enjoy food. They came to show off. Only one person was real, Margot, Erin, the only one who didn't care for the show. She simply wanted to eat, to enjoy real food made with love. That's why she survived. Chef 2 once rose from poverty. Somewhere inside, he saw in Erin a reflection of the reality he'd abandoned, and perhaps he respected her for it. Chef knew that the one who was supposed to accompany Taylor wasn't Erin. She wasn't even on the guest list. She was just used, a disposable outsider. That's why Chef loathed Taylor, and in the end, Taylor took his own life. By the film's final moments, we realize Chef deliberately chose his victims. Each guest was guilty of something: greed, corruption, deceit, abuse, arrogance. Some destroyed businesses with lies. Some mocked love. Some turned passion into profit. Chef wanted to purge his art, his food, from their pollution. He wanted to free his love from these pretenders. And Erin, she was the only one who revived that love, that truth. That's why she lived. Personally, I'd say this is one of the most unusual, symbolic, and deeply emotional movies I've ever seen. It's less about understanding and more about feeling. To me, it was brilliant, a unique concept that leaves you thinking. What did you think? Let me know. That's it for today.